It's the AI dumpster fire of the week, oh yeah. Bizarre responses make us all stop and stare. From coded dreams to errors that make you shriek. Step right up, see the AI freak show here.
You wouldn't download a car, you wouldn't download a grandma, and now you can't download the whale. Senator Josh Hawley, Republican senator from Missouri, recently introduced legislation that would prohibit the import or export to China, to or from China, of artificial intelligence technology, mostly aimed at Deepseek. And the thing is that the proposed punishments are pretty heavy. Yeah, as the legislation describes, and as the article I'm reading here from Mashable talks about, Americans could be fined up to $1 million for downloading Deepseek. We're probably going to spend most of this segment talking about how silly this is, but let's talk about why they think this is a good idea. Like, what is the intention behind this bill, making it illegal to download this? Josh Hawley says in the announcement, America cannot afford to empower our greatest adversary at the expense of our own strength. Ensuring American economic superiority means cutting China off from American ingenuity and halting the subsidization of CCP innovation. And then he referenced international concern triggered by the launch of DeepSeek's R1 model. I think a lot of that's coming from the financial concern. That when it deleted a bunch of NVIDIA stock by coming out with their claims of being trained for less. The legislation seeks to penalize people for downloading DeepSeek by making it a criminal act. If passed, the bill would enforce a $1 million fine, jail time for up to 20 years, or both, based on the Export Control Reform Act of 2018. I actually found the text of the bill. Funny enough, the title of this file is C/users/all/appdata/local. So somebody's not super computer savvy. But the bill is just an amendment to Title 18, which is that import-export code. Mm-hmm. And so those punishments are actually tied to other bigger import-export crimes that are already on the books. This would seek to make downloading DeepSeek fall under the purview of that and thus punishable by those things. Hawley's bill also proposes the prohibition of American companies from conducting AI research in China or in cooperation with Chinese companies, and banning U.S. companies from investing in Chinese AI companies. I'm not a lawyer or a politician, but I skimmed through the text of the bill to the best of my ability, and it really is pretty broad, it seems, from my understanding. The language is like...
I think it's overly broad. It is. As I went through it.
Anything in the interest of... If you were doing anything that could be perceived as being in the interest of Chinese AI research, you would be in violation of this. This is
Which
dumb.
would also have another... I think it's going to be interesting to see what the response to this is. But of course, that would also affect TikTok if because they're doing a lot of AI-based training as well. It affects all of the video models that are really good right now. So if you're thinking about Kling and Minimax and those kind of models, it would affect those as well. So it would really decouple, and I think that's what he called it, decoupling, the U.S. from China when it comes to AI. But I think it would also unintentionally, because he's not thought through this well, that I can tell, it would put a lot of us at the U.S. at a disadvantage because we wouldn't have visibility into what's going on with Chinese-based AI models.
Mm-hmm. The reason DeepSeek deleted so much NVIDIA stock when it came out and claimed it was trained with less is because everyone was like, oh, wait, you can train these with less? It's uncooperative. Not that there's the cooperation between the U.S. and China, that's a whole thing we talk about all the time. There are genuine concerns there, but yeah, it puts us... it just puts blinders on. And putting I can't imagine, and I don't want to imagine a future where I am put in jail for downloading DeepSeek and prompting it with some questions. You know what I mean? That would be bonkers. I think. Yeah. To enforce.
We could always talk about whether it's wise or not to participate at certain levels with these, but whether it's legal or not is a different story. This is an interesting conundrum, right? Because we've been talking for a few episodes about the tensions between the U.S. and China when it comes to AI and a whole host of other geopolitical
propaganda
things related to it. the thing that immediately came to mind for me is like, if you cut off people in the US from seeing and experimenting with models like Deepseek or Kling or Hunyuan or Minimax or any of the other ones, we don't know how good that technology is. And if all we have to go on is like the bad version of Sora that exists right now, or maybe the really good version of Google's VO2, which is very, very recent. But if all we had was the bad version of Sora that came out, and then you get something really good from China that's pushing disinformation, people don't know that AI is that good yet. And then all of a sudden it hits them like a ton of bricks, and all of a sudden half the population is falling victim to this kind of attack. So I think putting the blinders on is almost never a good idea. And then also it creates a false sense of security.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point that I didn't think of just the fact that we would be, if they develop something better and use it for a larger scale operation that is negative, we would not be as prepared. It's also not going to stop them from doing that if they did. Like, this wouldn't do anything but prevent U.S. people from engaging with it, or I guess U.S. people from like working with Chinese companies to help develop things.
But it stops a lot of joint research that's actually good as well. And it turns a blind eye to the fact that U.S.-based intellectual property is leaking to China all the time through people who have been co-opted by the Chinese intelligence services, Chinese people living in the U.S. or coming to the U.S. for student work, that or people that have been here for multiple generations, but they still have family in China, and then the intelligence service threatens the person here in the U.S. that if they don't do X, Y, or Z, that their family back in China gets harmed. So it turns a complete blind eye to that part of the problem as well. So our information, our IP can leak to China all day long, but we then essentially have no idea what's going on with their research.
And it weirdly targets like individual people in a way that this legislation like would make more functional sense if it was targeted strictly at companies that were seeking to like primarily work out of China or something for some economic reason. This weirdly targets like anyone who downloads Deepseek, like any individual person, and it just it criminalizes research, like you're saying.
Right.
And that's not
it did
good.
It did mention companies as well, if I remember right.
A lot of it has to do with that, with people like our best AI researchers not working for Chinese companies. I think that is like the only the only thing that has a whiff of quasi-sensible like reasoning behind it.
Right. It does mention that for a company, so as opposed to an individual, individuals can be fined up to $1 million. Entities, so organizations that are using Deepseek, could receive fines up to $100 million and forfeiture of their federal licenses, contracts, grants, or other public benefits. So there is an order of magnitude difference there, but I guess still $1 million fine for an individual is pretty big.
And it's just a weird and like uneducated and not thoughtful approach to legislating safety around a technological system, which is a problem that we have all throughout our regulatory bodies. Like the people largely in charge of making regulations and laws around these things do not understand these systems, and they don't seem to be consulting people who do.
And I don't know that this bill was written intended to pass. There's when you're in the political game, I think you do a lot of things so that you can make a statement and be known for being, for this cause or against this other cause. And I think that the vast majority of bills that we see somebody go up and sponsor are to make a public. They're done as a PR statement, not necessarily as a legislation type of real bit of legislative agenda.
Yeah, and that's something that happens all the time, too, in all sorts of areas of things, those PR-based bills. And I think something that may back that up, though I'm not like incredibly familiar with legal systems, is the fact that the first place I went to see if I could find the text of this bill was congress.gov. And right at the bottom, it says, as of 2/25/2025, which is today, the text of this bill has not been received by Congress. I managed to get the text off of Senator Hawley's personal hawley.senate.gov link.
Right.
But the Congress has not had it. So and this was introduced February 5th, I think was when I was seeing news stories about it. But I think it was first announced late January. So I also don't think that this is going to go anywhere, but it certainly made a lot of people say, hold the stinking phone.
Right. Yeah, and I think it was just a reaction to the Deepseek moment, right? And certain people within Congress want to stand up and they want to be known for something. And this was the thing that Josh Hawley wanted to be known for that day is being aggressive in the stance against China, dropping the Deepseek bomb on everybody.
Yeah. So I don't think we have anything to actually worry about in regards to this. We do have things to worry about in regards to people who don't know the first thing about these systems, making rules about them. But currently, I'm not aware of anything on the table even close to this. And this one's he's just making noise. But it got a lot of coverage, and I felt like it was worth talking about.
Yep. And if you go searching for this, what you'll probably find more mentions of instead, where there was a bipartisan bill between couple senators that were calling for Deepseek to not be allowed on government phones or devices, which makes a lot of sense. That's a good bipartisan effort that received a lot of support, makes a lot of sense. Single sponsor bills are almost always PR.
Yeah, and that is what's going on here. I'd like to imagine that there are competent people in charge of things, even, not given the current climate. That's a weird thing to say. You always hope that there are people whose names you don't know that are competent, that are in charge of things, quietly keeping things running. But I'm slowly losing faith in that as the days go on.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's only a handful of names that we hear all the time, and those are the people that are out there for PR. And I think there's probably a quiet 2/3 of the people that are part of government or part of legislature that really, really want to do the right thing as best they understand it, that fits within their worldview, and they don't care about the PR. They probably would not want the PR. They just want to do their job.
The only thing that's scary is that a lot of those people probably received an email asking them to send 5 bullet points of what they did last week to prove their job should exist. But we can't get into that.